All right, well, I've got a little after 11 here, so I think let's go ahead and get started for our webinar here today. So just a couple of kind of housekeeping reminders. First of all, the website that you logged in from also has the recordings of all of our previous webinars there as well. So if you missed one or want to share one with somebody else, please feel free to share that link or go back to that website and view it. Same for today's webinar. We are recording and we'll probably post it here in the next 24 hours to that same website if you would like to review it, or if you know somebody that maybe missed the live session as well. So this series is brought to you by kind of a collaboration of different folks, but primarily the Small Business Development Network, Montana Department of Commerce, Small Business Administration, MSU Extension, Montana Economic Developers Association, and then we get some support from the University of Montana and the Great Falls Economic Development Group as well. So with that, let me introduce today's presenter, which is Ashley Metesh-McCoy, and she's the director at Accelerate Montana, which is part of the Women's Entrepreneurship and Leadership Lab, and they are located at the University of Montana. As far as questions today, please feel free to send them in the chat window at any time. If you send them to everyone, that's fine. If you send them to just me, when I do get a chance to ask the speaker, I won't say the name out loud. So it'll be a little more anonymous if you want to handle it that way. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Ashley, and hope we have some good questions today.
Thanks, Joel. Thank you all for joining us today. I know probably a lot of you would rather be floating in the river right now, so hopefully this is a good half-hour use of your time. It's a big topic, so I'm going to do my best to distill it down to something you can use today. Can you guys just confirm that you can see this right?
That looks good.
Okay, great. Let me make sure, and I don't know if I'll be able to see the chat the way I have this set up. So
I'll watch the chat window for you.
Thank you. But yes, today's topic is customer service automations that save. I was thinking about this as a potential topic just because, number one, it's something that I really enjoy doing in terms of I like implementing software systems and automations in businesses for various functions. I geek out about that kind of stuff. So I thought, well, maybe I could share this. And then, you know, everybody's been saying, and there are some economic statistics to show that we're having a hard time recruiting and retaining service personnel. And so, you know, one of the ways that we can address that is by implementing some automations in our businesses to overcome staffing shortages and other challenges that we're facing at the moment. And I've been a business owner. Chances are you all are business owners and or you are in a leadership role in a business. And more often you're finding yourselves having to do all the things with less time and less money. So my hope is that this can help a little bit. Just a real quick thing to point out. I am with the W.E.L.L Women's Business Center. We're located in Missoula, but we serve women business owners and aspiring business owners across the state. We are funded in part by a grant from the SBA. And I will give you some contact information at the end so that if you'd like to follow up with us for more information, you're more than welcome to. Okay, so that's a picture of me multitasking. What would I know about service anyway? Why am I talking to you about this? Just really quick, I spent a good amount of time, my younger years, working in food and beverage as a server, as a bartender. Then I also worked in travel and hospitality, everything from a hotel maid or a motel maid to a corporate strategist to a travel agent and travel industry business owner. I did spend 10 years in the Army in service, but that's a different kind of service that we're talking about today. You know, more recently, I spent 6 years as an online business owner. And because my business was online, I did work a lot with different automation tools. And my business was a very high touch service provider service. So in order to be most efficient, I had to find ways to automate things, because when, the bulk of your revenue producing activities are your time, you do have to do some automations to make up for that, so that you can free up time to work on what's going to produce the most revenue, what is the best use of your time. And like Joel said, right now I'm the director of the W.E.L.L Women's Business Center, and we do advising and training for women in businesses across all industries. And like I said earlier, I love to implement small business automation. I geek out over it. There's all kinds of new developments, and I love to see when something makes a tedious task just run like clockwork for people. So why might you care? I mean, you're on this sunny day joining me here, so obviously you care, but I wanted to look up some recent statistics about the state of service, and Salesforce commissioned a report recently that just came out. They got the data back in September in 2020, but they just published it. So it's relatively recent. But I thought these were interesting things to share with you all. So 91% of customers say that good customer service makes it more likely they'll make another purchase. And obviously that's a significant majority of customers, but time and time again, we've been able to prove that it costs more money to convert and bring on a new client or customer than it does typically to retain them, even if we're talking about the cost it takes to implement customer service automations or staff customer service providers or implement loyalty programs. The cost to acquire a new customer still outweighs the cost of retaining. The changing environment. 87% of service professionals say customers have increased their use of digital channels during the pandemic. I don't think this is a surprise to anybody, but even, services that historically haven't been super digitalized, if that's even a word, we were forced into this digital environment when we were operating on an analog system through the pandemic. And what most service professionals are seeing is that their customers still prefer to do, a majority of their customers still prefer to interact in a digital environment versus an analog. And when I say analog, I'm talking about in-person, telephone. You can't technically count email, but I thought that was interesting that one of the things that service providers are sharing is that less customers want to work via email. And we'll talk about what the alternatives are shortly. Imbalanced resources. While, like I was saying earlier, we're having to tighten our budgets. We're having to work with less staff because we can't necessarily find the appropriate people to support our businesses as business owners. Yet caseloads in customer service is on the rise. And what's been interesting from this study is that throughout the pandemic, service professionals have noted that customers are more anxious and they're a bit more demanding in these customer service interactions. So the environment's more challenging and you're having to do more with less and less resources. And then finally, customer preference. 65% of customers prefer self-service for simple matters and rely less on phone, in-person, and email. And I think about this, for example, I work full-time and I'm a mom of 2 young children. A lot of times I don't get around to, making a haircut appointment until 11 o'clock at night. Well, I'm not going to call that hairstylist at 11 o'clock at night, or I'm probably not going to want to write on a to-do list, call the hairstylist tomorrow when she's open. I love it when a hairstylist has an online booking feature because I can do it. Our lives have become increasingly complicated and we want to be able to access services whenever the availability is needed. And what's interesting too, I'm a part of the millennial generation and the Gen Z generation that's following. They're growing up in a digital age, so they more and more prefer to work in a digital environment. So you know, unless your target market is an older demographic, perhaps that prefers in-person analog service, you're going to find that as time goes on, customer preference is going to continue trend in that direction. So some quick, like high-level examples of customer service automations. I guess I could take a break. Did anybody have any questions on that or comments that they wanted to share?
I'm not seeing any in the chat window at the moment.
Okay, great. So examples of customer service automations. One is live website or app chatbots with artificial intelligence. And I would say the simplest example I can provide for this is many business owners have a Facebook page. A lot of business owners nowadays don't even have a website. They do all their business from their Facebook page. Facebook has a relatively easy way to set up a chatbot, which is basically if somebody goes into the messaging function of your Facebook page and types a question, it will generate some pre-typed responses based on what you're asking. So say, I'm a mom at 11 o'clock trying to plan my next day, and I want to go to a restaurant the next day, but I can't figure out their operating hours. I could go to that Facebook page message section and say, what are your hours tomorrow? And if they had programmed that in, I could get an automatic response that says our hours are X, Y, and Z. And I say it's relatively easy because when you do go set it up, they have a lot of commonly asked questions that businesses received. And so they'll kind of walk you through setting that up. But, what does that do for you? It saves you time answering the phone. It saves you time answering an email. It saves you time paying somebody to answer the phone and answer the email. It's may not seem like a lot, but those little interactions can add up to a lot. And many website hosting services like WordPress, Wix.com have services like that available that you can enable within your own website. Automated email output or response. So this can be used a couple different ways. I mean, there's actually multitudes of ways you could use it, but there's two primary ways. So I listed the example of autoresponder sequences. If you're not familiar with autoresponders, that's just a term for different automatic email service providers like MailChimp. Oh gosh, why am I like blanking on all the different email providers? Constant Contact. There's a ton. So just look up autoresponder and you get, and what those services do is they'll create email templates that automatically go out to your customers. So for example, one thing you could do is after a customer purchases something on your online store, for example, they would automatically get one email or a series of emails that are queued up, a certain amount of days throughout the process that, for example, says thank you for your purchase, or if it's sort of a complicated item, maybe you include a video of how to use the item or how to set it up. Or maybe one of the emails is like, please give us your feedback. There's multiple ways you could use that depending on the product or service you're providing. So that would be sort of one way to do it. The other way would be you can set up like canned email responses within your autoresponder for troubleshooting. So if you have a frequently something that frequently happens with your product or service, you could have like a canned template that answers how to mitigate that, for example. So setting up some canned email responses is a way to utilize that as well. Number 3, self-service facilities, sites, portals, equipment. So this covers a broad range of things, but this goes back to that point that people want to be able to help themselves for simple things. And the nice thing about, implementing these types of things, most of these address simple fixes, right? They're not going to address super complicated fixes, and that's okay. what it's going to do is it's going to free up your time, your staff's time to focus on the complicated cases and then just automate these simple, easy fixes. So the most simple example of a self-service provision, I guess, is a frequently asked questions page. It sounds super like, oh, duh, but you'd be surprised how many companies don't have this. And, if whatever type of service you're providing, or product, inevitably you have questions that frequently come up that you probably spend way too much mind-numbing time responding to. So if nothing else, just creating a frequently asked questions page that you can send a link to people to is a really easy way to set that up. If you have something that often requires like a video demonstration to explain, creating video tutorials to show how to use the product or the service and hosting them on your website or YouTube, wherever, that's really helpful. I think we all are understanding that people are really engaged in video learning. And so it actually serves two purposes, which is super cool. If you host video tutorials, whether it's on your website or YouTube, it's also sort of a marketing tool. You can, if you're hosting on a YouTube, you'll get random people seeing what your product or service does that may not have been exposed to it otherwise, and then they'll go back to your site and purchase. And vice versa, if you host it on your site, that increases your search engine optimization, bringing you higher up in Google search results. And if I'm talking like super advanced, I'm happy to explain any of these terms. But the more content you have out there, the better is the bottom line there. Internal workflow automation. So this is sort of making you and your team more efficient, which provides a better customer service experience. There are lots of software programs out there. Customer relationship management, or CRM softwares, can help you create different automated workflows, same as project management software. And some of these software I'm talking about are things like Salesforce, HubSpot, Trello, and Asana. There's tons out there, and there are lots of industry-specific ones that are being developed all the time. So one way I could think about this is, say you get a question from somebody via email about how to use a product, or my product's not working. You can set up a workflow that automatically sends that question to, it makes a trigger that sends back that client, or customer, a link to the frequently asked questions page or the video tutorial that says, oh, I see you're asking this question. Let me refer you to this. If this doesn't help, let us know. And then at that point, maybe it's been resolved. If it doesn't help, the workflow can trigger an escalation to one of your customer service people. And at that point, depending on how big your team is and how complicated things are, you can put in different escalation pipelines, like triage pipelines, so that all of these different inquiries are going to the right people at the right time, and people aren't getting bogged down with simple things when they shouldn't be, for example. So that's a really nebulous way to explain how that might work, but it really is beneficial. And the thing about that type of thing is it does take some time to set up in the beginning. You do have to commit some time, possibly training for yourself if you're not familiar with it, or of course money to outsource the implementation of it. But it saves you so much time down the road and creates a much better customer service experience, and probably a much better experience for your employees as well. I feel like I'm talking really fast because this is a lot to cover. Any chats or questions at this point?
Yeah, we do have two that have come in so far. So the first one is, are there local people available to train staff to use these new tools?
I mean, it really depends on the tool. And, like for me, example, I work for the Women's Business Center. I'd be happy to help you guys with simple things. I have a colleague with me here, Marguerite. She may not be familiar with all of them. I mean, I'm not familiar with all of them either, but my best suggestion would be to reach out either to your local SBDC or your local women's business center, these types of resources, and see if they have anybody on staff that can help. And if they don't, it's possible that they know local businesses that specialize in this type of, software implementation services and things like that.
All right. And then the other question was about responses outside of normal work hours. Does this mean you're having employees staff some of those hours outside of your normal work hours, or would it just be automated responses in those non-work hours when people are interacting?
I mean, this is totally going to depend on your business and your industry. I worked in the travel industry. I had clients that would be traveling across the world, and part of my service proposition for them was that I would assist them during their traveling hours, which, meant that sometimes I was helping people in Europe at 3 in the morning. But, if that's not a part of your value proposition, then, no. And one of the things I like to say as a benefit of these automations is it can help you as a small business owner establish some boundaries. So, if that's not your business model where you should be addressing things outside of business hours, which is probably most most businesses, a lot of these questions can be addressed outside of business hours if you set up the automation, whether it's, them asking a question to a chat bot on your website and they just get an automatic response that says, oh, I see you're asking about our hours. Our hours are this. Or, oh, I see you're asking about how to use the doohickey. We have a video about this. That's where it takes some time to set up those processes, but they can run without you 24/7. And then in terms of staffing your people, again, that's completely up to you. But the whole goal with these automations is that you don't have to pay a lot for personnel staffing, and you don't have to be doing it in the middle of the night. So anything you can take off your plate is gold. And I know that, again, was sort of a general answer, but it really does depend on your particular situation.
All right. Thanks, Ashley.
Yep. And I would love to know if y'all could chat the industries you work in. I'm going to try to quickly go through these because we're close on time. But like these are some of the types of industries I've particularly worked with at the Women's Business Center. So I thought I'd kind of look into some of these for you. But I'd love to know what you all are doing just out of curiosity. So some of the industry specific examples, food and beverage, everything from robot servers that bring out drinks to food prep. There's a pizza company, I think in Chicago, that has a robotic machine that makes the dough, flattens it, and puts the sauce on, and then lets the actual human people, do the rest of the pizza. There are self-service kiosks. You've probably seen those in McDonald's. And then there are businesses that have the tablets at their table where you can order what you want, and then you can even pay for your service from the table. And then really what happens is in those situations is your service workers now become part-time service providers, part-time technology experts. It's almost like half Apple store, half, Red Robin. So it's kind of cool. It's enriching your employee's skill set. And then it also provides a couple different options for the customers who provide not to really interact with people, because let's face it, there are lots of people out there like that. And then there are still people there to help them along the way. So that's where restaurants are sort of trending. Looks like you have a question, Joel.
I was just going to say we had some responses to the industry, and we have some folks in retail,
Okay.
a couple in professional services, engineering firm, and then
Okay.
also some food manufacturing as well.
Okay, so I'll focus a little bit more on those. Retail, a lot of you have probably already heard of some of these, but there are automated inventory management systems. Like some of the more out there things, they're not really out there, but there are robots now that can scan shelves and keep your inventory management up to date. Automated return services. I think this one is a really fascinating thing to discuss. So, again, you're going to have to do the cost benefit analysis at your business for this type of thing. But, if you're producing a large, high volume of maybe small dollar value items and selling them, and you spend a lot of human capital time processing returns, you may consider setting up an automated return service up to a certain dollar amount. That way you're not wasting, any money, like any time and money, frankly, processing returns if at the end of the day you're saving time. I feel like I'm totally getting that backwards. If at the end of the day you're saving time, the return price is going to be write-offable, if that makes sense. So that's something to consider. Self-checkout, shopping cart suggestions, all of these things help the customer service process. And I just want to remind you that statistic in the beginning. If somebody has an easy, pleasant customer service experience, they're more likely to buy again. And one of the statistics I found that I didn't share is if somebody has an easy return process, they become more loyal customers. And if you think about businesses like Amazon, Zappos, Nordstrom, they're really well known for their easy return process, and they all have very loyal buyers. So those professional services, in many ways, I would consider those like a high-touch service. So, the ways you can mitigate personnel costs is by having appointment schedulers, things like Calendly, and then setting up reminders. Doctors' offices, they lose, I don't know, hundreds, tens of thousands of dollars every year on missed appointments. So the more reminders you can set up for people to come in, the better. Automated digital forms. If they haven't filled out their patient intake form prior to the appointment, they get a reminder. If you're a massage therapist and you need that waiver signed, as soon as somebody books an appointment, they get sent that digital form, and you're not going to do their, you're not going to do their massage until they have it figured out, and you remind them to fill out the form. Everything from, when you go to a place and they print out a receipt and there's a QR code that says, go here to fill out our survey. How many people do you think actually take the extra step to scan that QR code and take the survey? If you can text them a link to the survey, so all they have to do is stick their thumb to their phone, they're more likely to fill out that customer satisfaction survey. Anything you can do to make it easier for the customer, the better experience they're going to have and the more likely they are to return. In terms of manufacturing, things like those customer relationship management, project planning, customer support software that I was talking about earlier, manufacturers are finding that it's not just about quality of goods anymore. Customer service is becoming more and more important to manufacturers, customers. So having these processes in place, and like you said, taking the time initially to set up workflows and templates and systems and procedures, it seems like a lot, but it's worth it in the end. And then just again, mentioning that multi-channel support, not just email, in-person, phone, but live chat. You could even set up Zoom calls with your clients so that you're on the Zoom walking them through diagnostics. There's so many different channels that we can take advantage of now to provide service to our clients. So I'm out of time, but really quickly, there's some couple things you can do this week. If you don't have a frequently asked questions page, just knock it out. That is one easy, relatively easy thing you can do. If it's more of a complicated thing that you get questions about and it's easier to demonstrate, record a video tutorial and post it on your Facebook, your YouTube, your website. If you're a service provider, set up an online booking system for appointments or reservations. That mom at 11 p.m., you're missing her business because she needs to be able to make that appointment at 11 p.m. when you're not in the office. And then consider enabling automated refunds up to a certain price. Thank you so much. It's a lot, I know. Here are some sources. I'll send this out if you want to dig into it a little bit more. If you want to get in touch with me, here's how. Yeah, I'm able to stay a little bit if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, we've got some time for questions here. Let's start with, we have one more in the chat box, but I'll encourage folks, if you're on, if you have others, please send them in, or in a minute I'll invite you if you want to just unmute and ask it. But the one question we've got so far is, says, I work for the Montana 4-H Foundation, a nonprofit. I was curious how we could possibly utilize a dedicated text line in our marketing and some auto responses with potential donors.
Text like on a phone, right? Or on a website or something.
I assume on a phone.
Okay. Yeah, there are software programs. There are a couple that come to mind. Twilio is one that I can think of. I believe that is a text. I would look up just like texting customer service software or something like that. But yeah, there are text software apps out there that you can use. And you've probably experienced it. You'll ask your donor a question, and it'll say like text Y for, more information, or no to stop, or whatever. And basically what would do inside that software program is you'd set up sort of like a decision tree where it's like, if customer texts Y, they get this next message. If they text no, they're removed from the text list. And then you kind of keep going down the decision tree. I'm sorry I don't have a specific software program, but there certainly are solutions for that. And you can create texting campaigns to get your donors engaged and continually donating. But yes, that's definitely an option for you.
All right. Well, thanks for answering that. Are there other questions? And if you'd like to unmute, you're certainly welcome to do that as well. All right. Well, I thought it was interesting your comment on the medical thing. My dentist retired a few years ago and sold to a younger dentist, and I went from getting a mailed postcard reminder for my appointment to about 6 text messages and an automated phone call all the time. So
Yeah,
I know why.
it may seem like a lot, and that is certainly something. If it's too much, give that feedback to your dentist. Maybe they can adjust it down to 4 text messages instead of 6. But the sky's the limit really on what you can do on these types of programs.
Well, I haven't missed an appointment yet, so maybe it's
There you
working.
go.
All right. Well, Ashley, thank you very much for presenting today. We'll post her slides along with the recording to our website in the next day or so. And please mark your calendars for September 1st for our next session. And we'll have Robert Farmer joining us, and he's going to talk about managing the human side of change. So with that, I hope everyone stays cool and enjoys the rest of their August. So have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.